This is for anybody that's intending on embarking on a long distance relationship. Okay, so let me tell you, this was, mind you, this was a time of my life where I was very naive. But let me tell you the rationale as to why I justified being in a long distance relationship. So I had met this girl via Instagram, already a red flag, right? You should never try to meet somebody online in that way. So anyhow, I we exchanged numbers, whatever. We get to talking. She seems interesting. You know, had all the things I was looking for, right? But the interesting thing about a long distance relationship is that the distance allows you to create like a fantasy, right? So that distance, that level of distance allows you to create a fantasy between you and the other person, right? And so all that in between stuff, that space in between, allows you to sort of ruminate and start kind of concocting all these crazy stories in your head about what amazing this opportunity is and all these things, right? Because all the while you're not looking at her, so you can create that fascination in your head, right? That imagined reality. Okay, so I get with this person. We're together, right? We see each other once in a while. All right, we were together for about a year, so I made that work for a year. That is the first mistake because the reality is, if you are going to decide to go a long distance relationship, keep this in mind. Uh, if one or the other person is not going to move in to the same city or same area or vicinity within that year, if that's not the intention in the long run, then don't even do it because you're really going to just waste your time. The other thing that happens with these long distance relationships is that you kind of just stay in a honeymoon phase, right? Because there isn't enough time to get into fights, to figure each other out, all these things that a regular relationship would have to go through, the trials. You're not doing any of that stuff, right? Because you're just like honeymoon phase, right? You're like, oh, we can't fight because you're about to leave in a few days, so we have to just pretend like everything's all good, all right? And so those are the things that you overlook. The other thing is you got to keep the distance in mind. Is like realistically, like I'm in the States, she was living in Canada. I think she still lives in Canada. So it's like it's not that far. We're at least on the same continent. But I mean, realistically, it's like we're in different countries. Why would that even make sense, right? But like I said, I thought I had found a person that I thought was worth doing that for. So that was the part of it, right? How I justified it, how I rationalized it in my head was that, oh, this is definitely worth it because if it was just anybody else, then it wouldn't have been worth the time, the energy, uh, the sacrifices needed to get with somebody from far away. The other thing is too, the reality is you eventually will come up against reality, right? So that distance, once that was eroded, once we were seeing each other, I realized like, wow, there's a lot of things that I was overlooking or that I could not see because it was just on the phone. All right. I'm gonna get real honest with you guys. I'm gonna be very serious with this one. Um, she wasn't man, I feel bad saying this stuff, but it's the truth. Like her hygiene was not on point, right? I mean, I would be like, yo, like, aren't you gonna shower? Like that kind of stuff. Like her teeth were a mess. I don't want to get into any more because, like, at the end of the day, like, I don't, you know, it, if I had the maturity that I have now, I would have told her like, hey, these are certain things that are like non-negotiables for a young lady, for a beautiful one at that. Is that you can't be lacking in these departments, right? So that was where I dropped the ball. Is I should have educated her in that regard. What she did with the information would have been up to her, but I didn't even give her the opportunity. So I take responsibility for that part because I could have taught her those things. But like I said, I was young, dumb, and didn't really have like the maturity, the capability, the experience to be like, hey, these are things that I refuse to accept, right? I was just like happy to be with someone that I thought was pretty, and I didn't really have the confidence to really go back and forth with her about these uncomfortable issues because, right, granted they are a little bit uncomfortable, but they're necessary. So that is ultimately the goal with these long distance relationships. I don't advise anybody to embark on them. Like I said, unless the intention is one or the other person is going to move into the same city or at least be within the same time zone or something, right? Where it's like not that drastic of a distance. That would be the only case where I think that would make sense. But the reality is like that would never exist in my world anymore because one, I would never find somebody on Instagram. That's number one. Number two, I wouldn't even entertain the idea of finding someone in another country. It's just like that experience itself taught me that long distance relationship is frankly pointless. Okay. So anyway, so if you're thinking about it, dabbling in the idea of potentially getting into a long distance relationship, I advise wholeheartedly against it. But if you really insist on enjoying it and seeing what it's like, because it is like a honeymoon phase every time you see each other. And then knock yourself out, enjoy the honeymoon. But like I said, it's not the reality of a relationship. Okay, so just keep that in mind if you decide to embark on a long distance relationship.